Welcome, everyone, to the Loshak and the Bag Show. 1967 Heisman Trophy winner, Gary Beban. Thanks for being on the show, Gary.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning.
That's how you pronounce it, right, Beban?
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure. All right, it was a different world back then, 2018 to 1967. A lot of changes in the world and in humanity. Would you disagree with that?
No, there's been a lot of changes, but the score of games don't change.
That's right.
We were fortunate.
And how do you feel? College football has changed since 1967 when it comes to a handicapping perspective? Because obviously you've had an interest in handicapping college football spreads going all the way back to when you played it, right?
I wasn't quite interested then, not when I was playing. No, the game has changed a bit. The S's are still the same, though. The speed, strength, and size of players have increased. It's always interesting to go to a reunion to see how much bigger all the players are, let alone quarterbacks from the days of the mid-'60s to today.
All right.
But it's still a great game to watch, and obviously one that's enjoyable to play.
Well, welcome to the show. If any commenters have any questions for Gary Beban, post them, and I will try to read them and identify them and ask him if I get to see them. But before we get to any questions that the comment section has, you have some opinions on the two college football playoff games, right? The first game I want to ask you about, Alabama. Now, we see this time and time again with Alabama, year in and year out. They don't cover their spreads when they're like a 50-point favorite against Citadel, but they have just an uncanny knack for covering spreads that just seem way, way too high. Like they'll be like an 18-point road favorite again on the road against another ranked SEC team, and you'll be looking at that and thinking, really? And then, in the end, they'll cover relatively easily. They're a 14-point favorite here. Is that too high, or is that appropriate, and maybe Alabama still has value?
Well, the odd makers seem to have a real difference of opinion between 1, 2, 3, 4. To see that kind of spread, Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, Notre Dame, it's almost as though these teams are in different leagues.
Yeah.
Maybe they shouldn't be 1, 2, 3, 4. So in a bowl game of this sort, 14 points. I played Michigan State in '66. We were 13.5 points underdog to the first team of the century. And no one thought we should show up with that kind of spread. So it seems to be an awfully big one. But, boy, Alabama is so deep, and they have so many resources. It's a hard one to call on the spread. I think Alabama will be the winner, but boy, that's a lot of points on an Oklahoma team.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the big factor here, of course, is the discrepancy in the defensive numbers. Obviously, everyone talks about how vulnerable Oklahoma's defense is. Now, you know these players are aware of that, right? And in fact, it goes both ways because Alabama's going up against the Heisman Trophy winner. So and they're going to be, and everyone's predicting a shootout. So they've probably got a chip on their shoulder, right? They're thinking, wait a minute, we're the Alabama defense. It's not going to be a shootout because we're going to hold down this Heisman Trophy winner. And then on the other side, Oklahoma knows that everyone's talking about how their big weakness here coming in is their vulnerability on defense, and they're just going to get torched. So maybe both defenses come into this game psychologically with a chip on their shoulder.
Well, if I was Oklahoma, I'd be chippy. It's a 14-point spread, but the offense actually has to play defense to a degree by holding the ball a lot and keeping Alabama's offense off the field. That's going to have to be a critical play and a strategy that Oklahoma has. I know they have a fast striking offense, but in this case against Alabama, you may want to take your time and have some 10, 12, 14 play drives for scores rather than knocking off big scores along the way. The more you have Alabama's offense on the field, the more trouble you're going to get into.
Yeah, and the market is very, very uncertain where exactly to put this total. The spread, 14 across the board. No one has 14.5. No one has 13.5. They're set there. The Notre Dame Clemson game, 55 across the board on the total. But the total here ranges all the way from 79 up to 80.5. 79s, 79.5s, there's 80s. The Greek is up to 80.5. So there's a 1.5 point range on the spread market wide right now. And that's been that way for a day or so. The market is uncertain where to put this total. Sounds like maybe the under might be a sneaky good play again, because you're suggesting that maybe the game plan for Oklahoma is going to be to try to limit possessions, and maybe both defenses will come in here with a chip on their shoulder. Gary Beban, if we gave you a free play on either side or either the over or the under, which would you put it on as of right now?
Ooh, under.
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 Under, okay, and the under would be at 80.5 at the Greek. Pinnacle all the way down to 79. Look at that, the Greek, two sharp books. 80.5, strong disagreement here. 80.5 and 79. So you would be leaning under, and your thought is that I guess that Oklahoma's defense with the time off will be able to get it together to at least perform better than they have statistically season long.
I think Oklahoma's defense will do some scoring. If they don't, then the game's over.
All right.
They've got to do some scoring.
Okay. Let's talk about, let's see if there's any questions from the comment section, and then we'll move on to your thoughts on Notre Dame Clemson. This is friggin' awesome. Right. Flipper13 says, question, Beban, when did you first realize your nephew Jimmy was not going to be a football player? All right. Next question. Let's move on. Funny comment there from Flipper13. Let me see. Flipper13 says, question, Beban, what is your best bet this bowl season? You don't have to answer it, but if you do have a best bet this bowl season as of right now, and you'd like to share it with us, we'd certainly love to hear it.
Okay. No, I don't have one really.
No? Okay. All right.
Not yet.
SBR Forum says, question for the Heisman winner. What was your best game performance ever in your Heisman winning season?
Unfortunately, it came in a loss against USC and OJ in '67. We lost 20-21 for the national championship, and it's actually the first time I ever threw the ball 30 times or for 300 yards. But it was a great game to play in, and not many people get to play in a game in which you're playing for everything. You're playing for the national championship and the Rose Bowl, the city championship in Los Angeles, and OJ was on the other side, and we, in essence, played for the Heisman Trophy that day.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Here's a question from Ron Walsek. He says, ask Gary where his best edges come from. I'm thinking that probably, as a player, such a high-profile player and doing it for as long as you been watching the game as long as you did it, you probably can find good edges using psychological factors that other people might not be as intimately familiar with, like when a team is likely to be hyper-motivated or in a letdown spot. Where are the edges? Ron Walsek says, ask Gary where his best edges come from.
Inside the locker room. I think when you look at a team like Oklahoma, the kind of season they've had, kind of players they are, to be told that you're 14 points less a team than who you're playing that day,
right,
and the difference between 1 and 4 isn't that far. They just have to make sure they don't play any big mistakes. If they don't play big mistakes, it should be a closer game than that. But again, their defense has to score.
Yeah. And let me ask you this. What kinds of situations, just off the top of your head, result in a team or key players having, lack of motivation or letdown spots in their next game?
When they read the newspaper and hear they're 14-point favorites. I think that's not, I think Saban will counteract that, but that's an issue when you're being told almost in every direction that you're that good and that you're 14 points better than the number 4 team in the country. That's going to be in the locker room. Somebody will have read the papers. And, that's something that you have to coach against. And he's done an awfully good job of that over the years. Yeah, definitely. All right. Thanks so much, Gary Beban. Now let's move on to Notre Dame Clemson. This is an interesting game with some stark line movement. It opened to Clemson minus 10.5, got bet all the way up to 13.5. Unbelievable. A quick 3-point line move in a game like this. Very, very surprising. I actually previewed this game with some professional handicappers yesterday. I gave the opinion that I thought Notre Dame might be the play here. And I also suggested that by kickoff, the line might come back down towards where it opened, and we've already seen some line movement back in Notre Dame's direction. Yesterday, it was 13.5 across the board. Now it's back down to 12.5 at a lot of places, and I'm just looking at this. I don't know, how much you looked into the matchups here, but Clemson is very reliant on big plays offensively. Notre Dame is that's one of their strengths, is preventing big plays. And I guess the big question here, though, the reason Clemson's such a big favorite and the reason people bet them initially is just that they think this is a big step up in class from Notre Dame, and you can kind of throw their stats from the entire season a little bit out the window. Not completely out the window, but just a little bit, because they're going to be stepping up so much in class. Clemson is such a big favorite here, double-digit favorite. Is that justified? Well, I'll tell you what, I think Notre Dame is just a steady, deliberate, not a rush team. They're just going to plod their way along, a little bigger than Clemson, and if they can control the football again. And there are a lot of teams, 66, we had a plan. We were going to take 29 out of 30 seconds every play to make sure the other guys didn't get the ball. Notre Dame's got to have the same theory, and they're big enough to do it. They're big enough to pick up the first downs on, 3.5 yard and keep long drives alive so that the Clemson team is not on the field. I'm a big believer in that theory, by the way, obviously, that the offense can play defense by holding the ball a lot longer than the other team. So I'm not sure that I would have that kind of spread between the number 2 and the number 3 teams. I think it'll keep coming down as game time comes up, but it's a big spread.
Yeah, it really is. But you do see a lot of times when teams have looked good against, quality competition, but not elite competition, when they do step up, they get plastered. And then we really see where the difference in talent level actually lies. And in fact, in college basketball, we have a classic example of that today. Texas Tech, ranked team, number 12 against Duke. Texas Tech is undefeated, but they haven't played anyone near Duke's talent level. And a lot of people are suggesting that they're going to get steamrolled here. And we might be seeing a similar situation here in Notre Dame against Clemson. The total is 55. The spread is 12.5 or 13. Bookmaker is still at 13. Gary Beban, if we gave you a free play on either side of the spread here, or the over or the under, which would you put it on?
I think Notre Dame's going to play a better game than 12.5 points.
Notre Dame, yeah, and we can get 13 right now at Bookmaker. Bookmaker still has 13. That's awesome. So Gary Beban's recommended plays as of right now for the college football playoffs: Notre Dame plus 13 and the under in Oklahoma, Alabama, which can currently be had at 80.5 at the Greek. And then Jim also told me that you had an NFL play that you liked this week. Would you care to share that with us?
We had some ideas of the Seahawks and the Chiefs, but I think we're a little mixed up here on that one. I think the Chiefs are going to take this one going away, even though it's in Seattle. Even though Seattle's very tough to beat at home, I think the Chiefs see their way to having everything go through Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl, and that's a real powerful locker room driver.
Yeah, it sure is. The -2.5 is the line right now on the road. Russell Wilson always strikes me as the kind of guy that I kind of want to bet against in the beginning of the year, but then he starts to get better and better as the year goes on. I just hate fading Russell Wilson at the end of seasons.
It's been a tougher year in Seattle than I think even the press has covered. I think there's still a team trying to find their identity. I think there's still a lot of things going on in the locker room. The Chiefs have a lot to play for here, much more so than I think, at least you've read in the press and whatever. To have to go through Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl, to be able to play all your games at home, that'll be a big driver.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Oh, now we have. I'd love to keep you here for another hour. People are upset that I haven't been reading questions. Let me just scan if there are any questions that people would like to ask you. Let me see. Other questions that are coming in. I'm just going to try to find a question. Glenn Elliott Mann apparently has a question that he'd like to be addressed, but it's a little bit hard to scan around. And okay, here you go. Glenn Elliott Mann's question: Gary, are you disappointed that Gretzky got your great one? You, of course, were the original great one, and then Gretzky took it.
I'm not at all. There's only one great one, and it is Gretzky.
All right. There's your answer, Glenn Elliott Mann. I'd love to talk to you for an hour. Anytime you want to come back on the show, of course, you're more than welcome to. Just let us know, and we will definitely move anything we have to fit you in. As of right now, we're going to have to let you go. Gary Beban, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.